Hello everyone, my name is Ziad Rejabi, and today I'm going to show you how to use the Open XML SDK to write very large Excel files. So imagine a scenario where I work for a financial company that deals with very large amounts of data. This data happens to be stored in a database and gets updated daily. So the company's analysts actually use Excel to go and mine and analyze all the aspects of that particular data. So to help out these analysts, what the company does is every morning before the analysts come into work, they go ahead and update and create these huge Excel files that contains hundreds of thousands of cells of data. And so how do you go and create these large Excel files using the SDK? And that's what we're going to go through today. So when you're thinking about creating a solution on top of the OpenXML SDK, there's really two approaches for writing or reading content. The first approach is to use the strongly typed model, which we're going to call the DOM-like approach. The second way to accomplish this task is to use the SAX-like approach of using the OpenXML Reader and OpenXML Writer class. The two approaches have differences, and that's what we'll go through today. So here's a solution that I've created where I've referenced the OpenXML SDK, and here is the document format.openxml, and I've also included a few references. The first one is going to be .spreadsheet here because I'm going to be interacting with workbooks. The second one is .packaging since I'm going to be dealing with the workbook package as a whole. And the third one is just OpenXML, and that one contains the OpenXML Reader and OpenXML Writer class. So anytime you're creating documents, the easiest way to go accomplish this task is to create the right template. So in this case, I've created a simple template here called book.xlsx. And this is a completely empty book here that contains one sheet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and inject data right into this workbook. So to help out and make this solution a little bit easier, I'm not going to connect to a database, but instead I'm going to go and add random values to each of the cells here, given a set of dimensions for rows and for the columns. So let's go back to the solution. And the first method I'm going to show you guys is the DOM-like approach using the strongly typed access. So I've created a method here called writeRandomValues, given a file name and the number of rows and the number of columns. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up the spreadsheet, and then I'm going to access the main workbook part, which will have references to all the worksheets. So I'm just going to grab the first worksheet since there's only one worksheet in my workbook. Then I'm going to grab the sheet data element within my worksheet. The sheet data element is going to contain all the values within my worksheet. So what I'm going to do is for every row that I've specified, I'm going to create a new row. And for every column, I'm going to create a new cell that's going to contain a formula that's going to have the formula set to be random. So that way when Excel opens up the file, it's going to actually go ahead and calculate a random value for that particular cell. Once I have the formula set, I'm going to append that to the cell. And then I'm going to append an empty cell value because Excel is going to fill up that value for me when I open up the workbook. And then append the cell to the row. And I continue that for every row until for every column. And then I'm going to then add that row to the sheet data. And that's basically what the solution is going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And I'm going to open up my task manager to show you sort of the memory consumption of this solution. So what you're going to see here is the memory consumed by the solution is going to continue going up at a steep rate here, and this is because we are using the strongly typed access, which is going to actually load up the entire document up in memory. So the more and more cells we're adding here, the more and more memory is consumed. So eventually what's going to happen here is that most likely this solution is going to probably run out of memory. And there are ways to mitigate this, but there are also requirements to actually not consume as much memory and not actually make it grow linearly here with the amount of data being represented inside the DOM. So in this case, we've ran out of memory and we get this exception, and the solution sort of just stops. So how do we accomplish the same solution here, but this time using a SAX-like approach? So I'm going to go ahead and comment this DOM-like approach here and use the SAX-like approach. And I've created a similar method here that's going to go and take the file name, the number of rows, and the number of columns. And I'm going to again open up the spreadsheet, get the main workbook part, get the main worksheet that I have. So when you're using the OpenXML Reader and the OpenXML Writer class, these two classes have the ability to take in a particular part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the main worksheet part that I have using the OpenXML reader, and then I'm going to write to the worksheet using the OpenXML writer. You may be tempted to actually invoke a reader and a writer class on the same worksheet part. I would strongly recommend against doing that because the reader is only a forward-looking reader, and we don't want to write and interrupt where the reader is, and that may mess up the solution. So what we're going to do here is instead we're going to create a replacement part that's going to be a new worksheet within my workbook, and I'm going to invoke the reader on the old worksheet and the writer on the new worksheet. So at this time the replacement part is completely empty, and what I'm going to do is the very same solution that I had from before. Is I'm going to create a new row and cell, and this with the cell formula set to random, and cell value is empty. And once I have the cell all set up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to now read in the old worksheet part, and since it's forward looking, I'm going to have this while loop in here, and I'm going to do something special. If I get to the sheet data part, I'm going to then write a new sheet data element within my writer object, and for every row I'm going to go ahead and write out a start for a row start element, and then for every column I'm going to go ahead and write out a cell element, and I'm going to close down each of the elements that are appropriate, so write the end elements, and the OpenXML writer class knows which element to close out appropriately here. So we're going to continue this for all the rows and all the columns in my dimension. Otherwise, once I get out of the sheet data, or once I don't even get into the sheet data, I'm going to just write what I read. So in these cases here, I'm just going to write exactly what I read, and that's exactly the solution necessary to accomplish the task. And once I'm done, I'm going to just close down the reader and writer. And the way that workbooks work is that in the main workbook part, there's going to be some XML that references all the worksheets within the file. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go and replace the ID for the original worksheet with the new replacement ID. And that's how I do it here. And then delete the old worksheet part. So let's make sure that we're calling the SACs. And now let's go ahead and run it. And let's go back to the task manager. And what you're going to see here is the solution is going to run, and it's going to run much faster than the original solution that I showed you. And not only that, it's also going to run and consume a linear amount of memory consumption here at 1.38. So this solution here will not run out of memory and will achieve completion here at a much faster rate. So hopefully this solution here shows you how to actually accomplish the task. And as you can see, the solution was completed. So if I go out to the output here, it was a 4 megabyte file that it created, and will take Excel a couple of minutes to open up. But hopefully this solution here shows you the differences between the SACs and the DOM-like approach using the OpenXML SDK. And if you're interested in seeing the source code for this, what I'd recommend is you can go and visit my blog at blogs.msdn.com/b/Brian_Jones. Or you can actually download the source code directly from http://ziadrejabie.members.winisp.net/source code write large Excel files.zip. And well, Excel will take a little longer here to open it up, but I do assure you that it will open with a huge number of cells that actually have gotten inserted using the SDK. Thank you. My name is Ziad Rajabi.